said there are two sets of people on earth, the oppressors and the oppressed, and in between are the cowards and the hypocrites. Which are you?
No matter how tough the challenge, how high the obstacles, we always overcome.
What Nigerians need now is not about the daunting. Who can come and salvage us from where we are?
Representing people. Mr. President, my people are under siege.
I will place economic stability and confidence.
To condemn this act and call for the immediate release of this minister in the temple of God.
Access to our money we put in the bank. POS operator, she said 3,000 is 1,000 to collect 3,000 naira. Where are we heading to?
I've always said there are two sets of people on earth, the oppressors and the oppressed, and in between are the cowards and the hypocrites. Which are you?
No matter how tough the challenge, how high the obstacles, we always overcome.
What Nigerians need now is not about the daunting. Who can come and salvage us from where we are?
Good morning and welcome to Open Conversation on Atlantic Television Network. Open Conversation is the network's flagship political platform through which trending political news, events and stories are discussed with stakeholders. Through these conversations, ATN uses political talks about specific issues, party system and actors to explore hope and engender positive impacts to the society. Today on Open Conversation, we are still on End Bad Governance in Nigeria protest. APC opposition clash over Nigerian Labour Congress Secretariat raid. Protest, a chess game of power, Festus Keyamo stays. And then on to local government autonomy. Apex Court upholds local government tenure elongation. We are open for advert placements, bookings and commercials. You can connect with us on all our ATN socials. Facebook and YouTube, Atlantic Television Network. Instagram and TikTok, Atlantic TV Network 1. And on Twitter, Atlantic TV Net. Watch us live on our website, www.atlanticnetwork.tv. We'll go on a short break. When we come back, we'll continue. Do not go away.
Representing people. Mr. President, my people are under siege.
I will place economic stability and confidence.
To condemn this act and call for the immediate release of this minister in the temple of God.
Access to our money we put in the bank. POS operator, she said 3,000 is 1,000 to collect 3,000 naira. Where are we heading to?
I've always said there are two sets of people on earth, the oppressors and the oppressed, and in between are the cowards and the hypocrites. Which are you?
No matter how tough the challenge, how high the obstacles, we always overcome.
What Nigerians need now is not about the daunting. Who can come and salvage us from where we are?
Representing people. Mr. President, my people are under siege.
I will place economic stability and confidence.
To condemn this act and call for the immediate release of this minister in the temple of God.
Access to our money we put in the bank. POS operator, she said 3,000 is 1,000 to collect 3,000 naira. Where are we heading to?
I've always said there are two sets of people on earth, the oppressors and the oppressed, and in between are the cowards and the hypocrites. Which are you?
No matter how tough the challenge, how high the obstacles, we always overcome.
What Nigerians need now is not about the daunting. Who can come and salvage us from where we are?
Representing people. Mr. President, my people are under siege.
I will place economic stability and confidence.
To condemn this act and call for the immediate release of this minister in the temple of God.
Access to our money we put in the bank. POS operator, she said 3,000 is 1,000 to collect 3,000 naira. Where are we heading to?
I've always said there are two sets of people on earth, the oppressors and the oppressed, and in between are the cowards and the hypocrites. Which are you?
No matter how tough the challenge, how high the obstacles, we always overcome.
What Nigerians need now is not about the daunting. Who can come and salvage us from where we are?
Representing people. Mr. President, my people are under siege.
I will place economic stability and confidence.
To condemn this act and call for the immediate release of this minister in the temple of God.
Access to our money we put in the bank. POS operator, she said 3,000 is 1,000 to collect 3,000 naira. Where are we heading to?
I've always said there are two sets of people on earth, the oppressors and the oppressed. And in between are the cowards and the hypocrites. Which are you?
No matter how tough the challenge, how high the obstacles, we always overcome.
What Nigerians need now is not about the taunting. Who can come and salvage us from where we are?
Representing people. Mr. President, my people are under siege.
I will place economic stability and confidence.
To condemn this act and call for immediate release of this minister in the temple of God.
Access to our money we put in the bank. The POS operator, she said 3,000 naira is 1,000 to collect 3,000 naira. Where are we heading to?
I've always said there are two sets of people on earth. The oppressors and the oppressed. And in between are the cowards and the hypocrites. Which are you?
No matter how tough the challenge, how high the obstacles, we always overcome.
What Nigerians need now is not about the taunting. Who can come and salvage us from where we are?
Representing people. Mr. President, my people are under siege.
I will place economic stability and confidence.
To condemn this act and call for immediate release of this minister in the temple of God.
Access to our money we put in the bank. The POS operator, she said 3,000 naira is 1,000 to collect 3,000 naira. Where are we heading to?
I've always said there are two sets of people on earth. The oppressors and the oppressed. And in between are the cowards and the hypocrites. Which are you?
No matter how tough the challenge, how high the obstacles, we always overcome.
What Nigerians need now is not about the taunting. Who can come and salvage us from where we are?
Representing people. Mr. President, my people are under siege.
I will place economic stability and confidence.
To condemn this act and call for immediate release of this minister in the temple of God.
Access to our money we put in the bank. The POS operator, she said 3,000 naira is 1,000 to collect 3,000 naira. Where are we heading to?
I've always said there are two sets of people on earth. The oppressors and the oppressed. And in between are the cowards and the hypocrites. Which are you?
No matter how tough the challenge, how high the obstacles, we always overcome.
What Nigerians need now is not about the taunting. Who can come and salvage us from where we are?
Representing people. Mr. President, my people are under siege.
I will place economic stability and confidence.
To condemn this act and call for immediate release of this minister in the temple of God.
Access to our money we put in the bank. The POS operator, she said 3,000 naira is 1,000 to collect 3,000 naira. Where are we heading to?
I've always said there are two sets of people on earth. The oppressors and the oppressed. And in between are the cowards and the hypocrites. Which are you?
No matter how tough the challenge, how high the obstacles, we always overcome.
What Nigerians need now is not about the taunting. Who can come and salvage us from where we are?
Representing people. Mr. President, my people are under siege.
I will place economic stability and confidence.
To condemn this act and call for immediate release of this minister in the temple of God.
Access to our money we put in the bank. The POS operator, she said 3,000 naira is 1,000 to collect 3,000 naira. Where are we heading to?
I've always said there are two sets of people on earth. The oppressors and the oppressed. And in between are the cowards and the hypocrites. Which are you?
No matter how tough the challenge, how high the obstacles, we always overcome.
What Nigerians need now is not about the taunting. Who can come and salvage us from where we are?
Representing people. Mr. President, my people are under siege.
I will place economic stability and confidence.
To condemn this act and call for immediate release of this minister in the temple of God.
Access to our money we put in the bank. The POS operator, she said 3,000 naira is 1,000 to collect 3,000 naira. Where are we heading to?
I've always said there are two sets of people on earth. The oppressors and the oppressed. And in between are the cowards and the hypocrites. Which are you?
No matter how tough the challenge, how high the obstacles, we always overcome.
What Nigerians need now is not about the taunting.
Welcome back and thank you for staying with us. Joining me on Open Conversation this morning is Emmy Feraha. Good morning, Emmy, and welcome to Open Conversation.
Good morning, viewers, and good morning, Laurentia.
You're looking good, by the way, Emmy.
Thank you.
As always.
Nigeria is always good.
All right.
My blessed land.
Another story. Opposition parties in the country on Thursday condemned Wednesday's raid on Nigeria Labour Congress National Headquarters in Abuja by security agents. Reports have it that the armed men, allegedly from DSS, invaded the NLC office and carted away several documents. According to the Congress, the raid took place around 8:30 p.m. with operatives reportedly breaking into the Labour House. NLC's head of media and public relations, Benson Oba, said the attackers ransacked the bookshop on the second floor, confiscating hundreds of books and other publications. The invading team claimed they were searching for seditious materials allegedly used during the End Bad Governance protest, Oba said. But the DSS spokesman, Peter Afunaya, denied the allegation. He said, "Please kindly note that this service, DSS, did not carry any operation at the NLC office in Abuja." Opposition parties in separate interviews condemned the action. The PDP Deputy National Publicity Secretary, Ibrahim Abdullahi, characterized the action as an attempt to suppress the labor union. What happened yesterday is condemnable. As a party, we do not subscribe to that approach. Security agencies shouldn't be deployed to go into institutions of the state, like the Labour Office, to ransack them and then suspect or blackmail them into sponsoring what you call a protest. We see it as a further attempt to coerce the citizens and get them into silence. That is just the attempt or the decision of the APC, the PDP chieftain said. Also, human rights lawyer Femi Falana described the invasion as a shameful reminder of the dark days of military dictatorship in a statement he personally signed on Thursday. For genuine Democrats, it's utterly regrettable that official actions in a democratic dispensation could be reminiscent of atrocities that defined the dark days of military dictatorship. It is incontestable that it is illegal for security forces to invade the homes and offices of law-abiding citizens and corporate bodies under a democratic dispensation, Falana said. Also, the Civil Liberties Organization described the invasion as an egregious abuse of democratic principles in a statement by its executive director, Ibuchukwu Ezike. However, the ruling APC called for calm, saying it was too early to start trading blame over the alleged invasion. In an exclusive phone call, the National Publicity Director of the party, Bala Ibrahim, said it is something that can be multidirectional and one thing leads to another. Unless and until you're able to get information from those who are investigating as to what prompted their action, you cannot just preempt and jump into conclusion by saying a particular action is wrong. You don't know from the angle they are coming. It might be some information given to them, and in their course of investigation and in an attempt to leave no stone unturned, they will invade premises with a view to getting clues. One thing about crime is that no matter how smart you are, you always must leave something behind that will give clue to it. So that is the ugly side of crime. I think for now, it will be too early to jump to a conclusion and say action A or action B is wrong. It has to be after the investigators have been debriefed and got information with regard to what led to their action. Let's not begin to paint political pictures based on emotions and sentiments. We will be one-sided and wrong. Emmy, what is your take on this story?
Everything must not be centered around politics. Today we live in a dire situation where we need every vital information to ensure our safety, to ensure our inclusiveness, to also ensure the tranquility of the state. But if we continue to make hasty conclusions and ride on emotion, sometimes we are doing ourselves that at the end we also regret our actions. I think first we must establish, does the security agencies in Nigeria has rights, to go for searching for materials that might be incriminating or that might aid investigation all to ensure the safety of the society? The answer is yes, they do. But there are processes that are outlined by the law through which some of these actions can be carried out, because we are in a constitutional democracy. And in a constitutional democracy, actions and the processes are all stipulated and expected that every citizen conform their actions to the writings of the law. But if we do things outside of this, then it becomes undemocratic, and it also open room for several criticism that wouldn't have been there. So for me, I think the DSS or any security agency have that right to so do. But the question now is, what manner was the action carried out?
Right.
Was it in line with the law? Some of these things are overzealousness. You can actually do this thing without illegal invasion or suspicions that we are now seeing that are thriving around the society today. You can do this by simply obtaining a search warrant from a court of competent jurisdiction, and you simply go to that place and say you are here for a search, and you can do that without causing unnecessary uproar. But in a situation where we decide to conceive everything and to believe or to behave as if we are above the law, create room for criticism such as the one we are seeing today, I think the DSS and every other security agencies read your powers and follow them accordingly. You have the right to secure the society. You have right to curtail suspicious violence in the society. But how are you going about this? Are you making Nigerians to be frightened, or you are actually providing the necessary security and the peace that is required for a society to develop? These are the questions, and these are the rooms that are being created by the reason of this invasion today. So the DSS and every other security agency should be careful and subject their actions to the rule of the law. That is what is expected in a democratic state, particularly when it is a constitutional state. I think this is just my take.
Now, there are questions about the dictatorial approach of the government to issues, particularly when it comes to this protest. Now, let us look at the backdrop of what possibly could have led to this invasion. Now, NLC had a NEC meeting, National Executive Council meeting, that was on Wednesday, and a communique was issued at the end of that meeting. Now, there were some issues that NLC outlined. Clearly in the communique, NLC was in support of the protest. They said that Nigerians have a right to protest, and NLC also recalled that at some point that they had warned the president of his policies that were anti-people, and according to the communique, that the president resorted to insults and name-calling. I'm putting their exact words, that the president resorted to insults and name-calling instead of actually, looking into the issues, particularly when NLC went on some, I think, 2 or 3 days hunger strike against the policies of the federal government. That was one of the things they stated. They also condemned the human rights violations during the protests, particularly with respect to killing of protesters, mass arrest of protesters who were peaceful, attacking protesters who were unarmed and who were not violent in any way. They condemned that. They also said that flying a flag during the protest was not treasonable, and that if the government wanted to actually look at treasonable issues, they will look at bandits, more important issues that have been, facing Nigeria security-wise. They also talked about political interference with respect to the NLC Labour Party issue and the government using the Ministry of Labour to clamp down on NLC. So moving forward, they also told their members to, by every means, use every means within the law to ensure their safety during the time of the protest. So basically, NLC was backing the end governance protest by their communique, and also calling out the government on some things they felt the government isn't doing right. So now, this happened on Wednesday, and then on Thursday, this invasion happened. And according to the press release by NLC late yesterday night, they said that that invasion happened by 8:30 p.m. yesterday. That was Thursday. And that they mentioned the men of Nigerian police force. They said people who wore black vests and dressed like DSS and some other persons who were on mufti, that they were the persons that invaded. And according to what they said, that they are looking for seditious materials, you know, in line with, to indict NLC of being complicit in this end governance in Nigeria protest. There are two dimensions to this. Could it be that the communique released by the NLC clearly supporting the protest and calling on the government to action, could it be, one, the invasion on NLC Secretariat, could it be as a result? And secondly, the government tying the end bad governance in Nigeria protest to NLC. Could it be an indictment? What is going on? What could be the body language of the federal government? And finally, does that mean that the protest in itself is treasonable? Does that mean that the protest in itself is wrong if the government is trying to fish out organizers of this protest? Though there is an issue of regime change, but that is basically in the north. You agree with me? So, look, can you periscope on these issues? I want to get your reaction to these dimensions of the story.
The questions are much. So
Three questions.
So let's take the one after the other.
All right.
The issues of the Nigeria economic woes, which is also having a link to our socio-political woes, if you x-ray them critically, the question will be, who is actually innocent? Is it the NLC? Who will tell the people this is how we do it here? The NLC that shows most of the politicians on how to loot and how to change figures. So some of them are members of the civil service. But the question now is, are we actually innocent of the situation? That is on the one hand. Then on the issue of policies, I like being specific so that when I'm talking, I will know what I'm talking about. You said the policies that are anti-people. Which of the policies? You state the policies and you will tell us how is it anti-people for us to understand and look into the nitty-gritty of these policies and analyze them properly. But we say the policy that...
Now, the Nigerian Labour Congress talked about the removal of fuel subsidy, the floating of the dollar.
That's good. So the removal of the fuel subsidy, before now we have been crying that we're actually subsidizing this PMS product to other African nations. Sometimes we subsidize what we don't even consume. I will be crying that yes, this is a bad omen to our economic survival, and we can't continue in that trajectory. So we must find a way to curtail it. Yes, the policy to an extent wasn't perfect, because before removing this subsidy, we ought to have our refineries, functioning, and other alternative created. But it was done hastily to the extent that it was declared that subsidy is gone without actually giving, little room for other economic indices to play out. And that actually created a lot of inflations in goods and services. But however, is that policy actually completely bad? Then you will look at how it has also helped to encourage the national revenue to the extent that we are talking about 9.1 trillion naira as aggregate revenue that has been generated based on the subsidy removal. Now the question now is, if the policy to an extent, the way we look at it from the perspective of the NSA, is that bad, what about the increase in revenue in aggregation that has helped the nation to reduce our debt services from 97% to 68%? Is that also a bad idea? Do we also say that based on the subsidy removal, they have also helped us to clear what they call foreign exchange obligations that was amounting to $5 billion, that was also a bonding on the Nigeria state that had been cleared? Is it also a bad policy to that extent? Is it also bad that actually the subsidy removal actually, create room for more money to be allocated to state and the other tiers of government, which the local government, to the extent that assuming this money were invested into critical infrastructure, won't we have some of these problems solved? So we will just say the anti-people policy without looking at the nitty-gritty and straying the policy critically. Sometimes we also create more problem in trying to solve a societal problem. So for me, the NLC, talking about protests as well, there's difference between protests and riots.
Okay.
When you are protesting, it is the right of every Nigerian to protest. But we must also bear in mind that where our right ends, the other citizens' rights begins. So in protesting, we must have this thing in mind, not to hinder or infringe on the rights of the other Nigerians.
Were there no,
but in a situation,
weren't there protesters who were attacked, unarmed peaceful protesters who were attacked? Did that not occur in this protest?
See, I'm not working with the security. I've had situations like that. I've heard about them, that they occurred, but I'm not actually seeing some of these videos without the one that are actually were engaged in rioting, in looting of property and destruction of access.
In the north.
In the north. We've seen this thing. Most of these ugly pictures are coming from the north and few from the south. So we NLC try to classify every action that took place within the period of that protest as protest. Sometimes we are not also doing the nation any good, because if people or citizens engaged in the destruction of public assets and also looting of private citizens' property, are we encouraging such action in a democratic state, or we're actually trying, to persuade our people not to engage in that?
The stand of NLC, regardless, the stand of NLC in this protest, does that warrant the government or the DSS and police, as it were, to take the actions they have taken to invade the office of the NLC and then try to say that they're saying that they are looking for materials to link NLC to end bad governance in Nigeria protest? Does that even make any sense?
I don't think the security people will say we are looking for material to to indict NLC, but they will do that without even mentioning it. How? You see, I have said it before, that what the law permits you to do, you don't need to do it illegally or through illegal means. If you want to search for incriminating material or material that are assumed to be inciting, the courts are there. You can approach the court for a search warrant.
But in this instance,
and go to that building
warrant
and do those things in line with the law of the land. But your refusal to have, undertake that part is what is actually creating some of this uproar now, and the condemnation that the security agencies are receiving right now. So for me, I have condemned that action. You don't need to invade the headquarters of NLC to search for material, where you can actually do it in line with the law. But on the other hand, do you have any incriminating materials with you? Do you, keep materials that you use in inciting citizens? These are the things that Nigerians ought to have endured a little and allow the investigations to be concluded. Then we now make our conclusions from
so
there.
Is it going to be a government where opposition voices are stifled? Is it going to be a government or a system of government that claims to be democratic, but in its actions is very much undemocratic? How do you make it make sense? NLC is not a party of the government. NLC speaks for workers. NLC speaks for Nigerians. And if the government, in their stance, according to what most Nigerians are saying, that the government is not paying attention, whatever policies that the government is taking, yes, there are policies that have incubation stage, and it's going to take a while. And probably some of the policies by the federal government is at that stage right now. And that was why probably the president said we have to endure these baby pains right now. The question is, the man in the market, the man pushing wheelbarrow, the woman selling gari, the POS operator, even students and parents alike, what they understand by governance is when it trickles down to them. When they are able to afford things with the little money they have, when the money they have is able to have value. But right now, the purchasing power of Nigerians are being cut down day after day. What 30,000 naira can afford you last month or last 2 months, you will agree with me that 30,000 naira cannot afford the same thing this month. 3 square meal has become a luxury in Nigeria, and that's the sad reality. Now, whatever policies the government is embarking on, as beautiful as it is, has long-term effects. The question is, what is the short-term plan? Yes, the president has come out to say so and so amount of money has been released, but it's not trickling down to the people.
That's good.
So now, is it a question of the people not even knowing their rights and the right people to channel their grievances to? Or is it a question of the National Orientation Agency not even doing their job? Do they even exist at this point?
You see, Laurentia, there are things we need to put right here. First, NLC is an interest group. And by the action of NLC, one can actually conclude that NLC does not speak for Nigerians, but NLC speaks for the interests of its member and itself. Example, recently you just enumerated the economic situation in the country. NLC are so aware. They know that other Nigerians, access the same market that they who are working actually, also go there to purchase their needed materials. But NLC went to a negotiation table. Did they include the unemployed? Did they include the interests of those who are earning from the private sectors? Did they include the interests of the man in the village? But rather they went there to discuss their primary interest, which is the salary increment of workers, right? That is to say that the NLC are also selfish to an extent, thinking about themselves and not actually in the interest of the general Nigerians.
Yeah, right.
Then on the other hand, the economic downturn, I don't think is actually, limited to the Nigeria state. That is just the fact. I was speaking with one of my friends some of these days. He said one thing, that in Nigeria, a land that we are always complaining and complaining. I say, yes, we are complaining because the economic condition is so harsh that even buying pepper at the market, it become a very, a turbulent something. And he said, like, how much? I said, with 200 naira, you can afford a pepper. But usually with 100 naira, you can access this fresh pepper and all that. And he laughed. He said, do you know how much we buy pepper, even in Togo? Do you know how much they buy pepper around other African states? I said, how much is it? And he calculated it. The 200 francs CFA that we talked about is almost about 500 plus. 5 seed of fresh pepper. It's 500 plus. So that is what they pay. How much we buy palm oil here? Well, he said with 1,000 naira you can afford some palm. He said if you calculate it by the currency exchange in their own land, they buy palm oil for a rate of almost 3,000 or 3,000 plus.
What is the value of their money against our own?
A little higher. It's
higher. It has more value, correct?
Yes,
then it will reflect positively for them. Would you agree?
According to them, that a bag of rice that we are talking about 70,000 complete is 140,000.
We can't make that comparison because their money has more value than ours.
Based on the availability of this product that we are even enjoying here in Nigeria compared to what they are doing. This is not to justify that the government of the
our
Nigeria
economy
state
and their economy,
well,
is it the same?
And our economy, according to the indices and everything we extract together, is even better than theirs.
Do they have the resources that Nigeria has?
This is where
now we are talking about oil. We have not even entered into solid minerals in the north.
See, this is where I am saying that my position now is not to justify that the managers of our economy from the federal down to the state have done well. These actions that we are suffering today has been something of ages.
Right.
We have been trying to manage them without actually tackling the situation, and now we'll be faced with the reality. This is where we are now.
Okay.
We have not been farming. We have not been doing so many things that we ought to have done as a state, as a local government, and as a country. And as a community, we've not been doing these things. And the reality is now confronting us that, yes, we have not been producing. So hunger is inevitable. But the way we talked about these things, as if these things are limited to Nigeria, sometimes we just incite some of our minds against the country, which might not be to the good, be for the good of all Nigerians. Because if we live in a chaotic society, I don't think we will be able to go to the market to even sell and buy. Most of those who we need to go out on a daily basis to earn a living. So if a society is thrown into chaos and all that, we will suffer it. That is the other. And then let's come back to another aspect of the NLC argument that says, hey, as it were today, the federal government, I stress this in 3 times. You know why? Because according to our ground norm, there are 3 tiers of government. But as we speak today, if NLC speaks, NLC will tell you federal government. Are there no state civil servants? Are there no local government civil servants and the rest of it? They will tell you federal government. And currently, among all the palliative that have been, dish out, the trucks of grains and all this, that I've been hearing, all come from the federal government, including the one that was celebrated in Rivers State here, where some of the illegal caretakers and all of them were saying we are not sharing palliative to our people to make them live well. It's also the palliative that came from the federal government. Then where is the one of the states? Where is the one of the local government? So if NLC, if we want to address our problems, we should address them holistically. We should not politicize them and try to make some people look as if they are angels, while some are the demons. Whereas it is a tripartite problem. This is my gross with the NLC. We can't continue to incite the mind of the people against certain level of government and begin to applaud other level of government that are even impoverishing us the more. So for me, I don't think the protest is good and also bad, because it has turned to rioting. And NLC don't see this as a problem in Nigeria state, to the extent that they even position that hosting and waving of foreign flags in a sovereign state is not an issue. It's not a problem. Do you know that if you throw this nation into a situation of crisis where every man is allowed to do according to his wishes and needs, do you know even the NLC cannot gather? They can't gather. So we continue to wave flags. Some are waving Russia flag, others will now wave Chinese flags, others will wave Belgian flags, some will wave the flags of England and the rest of it. Then what society are you building for yourself?
Right. Supreme Court's July 11, 2024 judgment includes far-reaching decisions that will significantly alter local government administration in the country. The Supreme Court has affirmed the financial autonomy of Nigeria's 774 local governments. In a unanimous judgment of its 7-member panel on July 11, the Supreme Court unanimously upheld the suit brought by the federal government to strengthen the independence of local governments in the country. A member of the panel, Justice Emmanuel Agim, who delivered the court's lead judgment, held that the local governments across the country should, from July 11, receive their allocations directly from the Accountant General of the Federation. He ruled that it is illegal and unconstitutional for governors to receive and withhold funds allocated to local government areas in their states. He ordered immediate enforcement and compliance with the orders of the court by the state governments and successive governments henceforth. Today, we'll be discussing an important part of this judgment, and that is the local government tenure elongation by the Supreme Court. The judgment partly reads, under Section 135, subsection 3 of the Constitution, the tenure of 4 years for the President, provided for by Section 135, subsection 2 thereof, shall be extended for periods not exceeding a period of 6 months at any time by a resolution of the National Assembly if it is not practicable to hold elections. By the same token, by a law of a State House of Assembly, the tenure of local government councils can be legally extended for any reason, such as insecurity or war, if it becomes impracticable or impossible for elections into the local government councils to be conducted. The mandate given to an elected local government council is the mandate of the electorate of that local government area. And if the tenure is extended, it is the people's mandate that is extended. If the tenure of a local government council is truncated, as it is the norm now, it is an illegal termination of the electorate's mandate, and it is not to be encouraged, but roundly condemned. Also joining me on Open Conversation this morning is Associate Professor Emmanuel Warner. Associate Professor Emmanuel is an Associate Professor, Department of Political Science, University of Port Harcourt. Good morning and welcome to Open Conversation.
Thank you. Good morning.
Yes. Now, following the story, what is your reaction on the Supreme Court upholding local government tenure elongation?
Well, I think that's in tandem with the tenets of federalism. Nigeria is a federation, and is practicing a federal system of government. We are aware of the fact that federalism is like a spectrum, and at a point in that spectrum, the Nigerian society, Nigerian government has decided that a third tier of government should be part of that federal arrangement. The essence is to ensure that there is decentralization, which of course will enhance development in the rural areas. I mean, bring government closer to the people. And by that token, there is a constitutional arrangement that reflects that. But given the 1976 local government reforms, that tier of government became constitutionally recognized as the third tier of government. And given the provisions in the federal system of government, the tiers of government are expected to be autonomous, given the devolution of functions and powers, to the different tiers of government. And so what that means, therefore, is constitutionally speaking, and by the arrangement of Nigerians and those who drafted that constitution, it means that local government, by virtue of constitutional provision, which we respect as the ground norm of our society, is expected to, enjoy that autonomy, fiscally and otherwise. And so what that means, therefore, is that the judgment of the Supreme Court is an affirmation, a confirmation of that constitutional provision. And that is why it's important for us to understand the fact that in a democratic system of government where, it is expected that the theory of separation of power should be upheld in terms of actually dividing the functions of the society, governmental activities into the different organs of government, to the extent that each organ of government is expected to perform specific functions. And given that, by extension, you have checks and balances. What that means that in spite of the fact that, or despite the fact that you have separated organs of government, there should also be checks and balances. The essence is to, avoid arbitrary rule and ensure that, the government of the day is a constitutional government rather than that of the whims and caprices of leaders of the society. So I think it's important for us to begin to look at, that judgment and see how it relates vis-a-vis what I call very, very internecine disrespect and disregard of the constitution of this country. Like my colleague just pointed out, if we are thrown into the Hobbesian state of nature, where we don't even look at the constitution, the laws, because human beings, naturally speaking, we have these, sometimes I used to tell my students, I used to give them this conundrum. Is it true that a normal human being is also a mad person? And we have argued and seem to have come to the conclusion that yes, because if you don't have laws, there is the tendency that human beings will begin to exhibit those animalistic tendencies, which Thomas Hobbes taught in the state of nature, where life will be short, solitary, nasty, short and brutish. And nobody will like that kind of society, So it's important for us to begin to respect and, obey the laws of the land. Because what we are seeing currently in Nigeria is the fact that, particularly with regards to the local government autonomy, is the fact that, state government, given the nature of politics in Nigeria, have actually, violated this very important aspect of the Constitution, where, local government caretaker committees are appointed
without recourse to the provisions of the Constitution. I listened to some people here in Rivers State, even including the governor, when he alluded to the fact that where this is done in other states, is our own state different? And again, to the fact that where the past government of Nyesom Wike also did it. So, I mean, can you justify that because other people have done that? Or will you also say that because somebody killed somebody in Abia State and the person was not arrested, so it is justifiable that you kill somebody in River State? I mean, I don't understand. And it also explains the fact that there is what I call executive rascality in this country, given the fact that, you know, over the years, and it bothers me that the attorneys general of this country over the years did not do what this present attorney general did. You are the law officer of the country, and by virtue of your position and the judicial system that's supposed to serve as watchdog, these things were done without any recourse to the fact that they are breaching or violating the Constitution of the country, and thereby setting very, very dangerous precedent, which, you know, some people are now beginning to refer to. But be that as it may, we are aware of the fact that, you know, Constitution is the ground norm of every society. And the essence of having a Constitution is to actually regulate the behavior of human beings so that it will be in tandem with a civilized society. Because civilization is a very, very veritable instrument for development. If you don't have civilized citizens, by virtue of the fact that every citizen should be amenable to the provisions of the Constitution, what that means, therefore, is that, you know, you are creating room for people to begin to behave anyhow they like, and then apply the Constitution selectively, like the way it is being done now. Selective application of the provisions of the Constitution to suit, you know, parochial and selfish interests. So I think that it is important that every given point in time, we should be able to actually have a recourse to the provisions of the Constitution. You know, what that also means to me is that I was reading that judgment today, and I felt that. In fact, to me, I was like, these men are very, very thorough in this judgment. Because aside from the fact that they were able to, you know, jettison those preliminary objections in terms of if the Attorney General has a local standing and whether, you know, they are going to transfer, but the registrar did not sign the originating summon. And I mean, they were able to also condemn that. But the nitty-gritty of that judgment, which I think is very, very paramount in this issue, is the fact that, look, you have a third tier of government, and that third tier of government, by constitutional provision, is expected to live a life of its own. Maybe the autonomy thing is confusing us. That tier of government is expected to live a life of its own. But it is a very, very condemnable actions of politicians in Nigeria over the years that, you know, they tend to do everything almost outside the provisions of the Constitution. What informs you, what gives you that constitutional, you know, authority to begin to appoint, you know, caretaker committees. And even as it has happened in Rivers State, I want to also make reference to that. It's the fact that, look, given the fact that a Supreme Court, and that's the highest court of the land, has given a judgment, like you just read, with immediate effect. With immediate effect. You still have here in Rivers State people who are still parading themselves as caretaker committee chairman. Sometimes I listen to them in radio, commending them, making decisions, making policies, making this, and we are keeping quiet. What does it show? It shows utter disregard. It shows sheer rascality to the constitution and authority of this country. A Supreme Court. We're not just talking about any other court here. We are talking about the Supreme Court of the land. And some people are still calling themselves caretaker committee chairman. People are congratulating them with ability. What are we talking about in this country? Where are we heading for in this country? Because I know that if there is a pronouncement, even at the lower court, the court makes a pronouncement, a ruling, it stands, except that ruling or appointment has been vacated by a higher court, given the hierarchy of courts. By now, we are talking about a Supreme Court. Yet, you still find people, I don't know where they are coming from. I don't know if they don't have any regard. In fact, the last time I listened to...
Are they not empowered by the governor? The governor actually inaugurated them as caretaker committees. So if the governor had asked them to resign, I am sure they will not be parading themselves. So is the blame going to these caretaker committees as right now, or to the executive arm of the state?
Well,
who empowers them?
When you talk about executive arm, that executive arm does not exist in a vacuum. It's made up of human beings who are Nigerians. Whether you are the governor or you are the caretaker committee chairman appointed, or you are just ordinary Nigerians, you are subject to the provisions of the constitution of the land, especially when that has been expressly interpreted by a Supreme Court in this country. So when the court has given that job, you don't need the governor to come and tell you, okay, I've dissolved you. You don't need that formal pronouncement.
They should resign.
They should resign and should stop parading themselves as local government care committee chairman. That's what it means. You don't need the formal declaration by the governor, because the governor is also a citizen for the first instance.
Who funds them?
Well, the issue of funding, and of course from the judgment, they were told that funds meant for local government should not be paid to the state government account henceforth from July, you know. And what that means that if they are expected to function, then maybe they should be looking for alternative personal or charity organization donations for them to perform. Even when they do that, they are not supposed to, officially speaking, begin to use such money yes, governance for the local government areas. They're not, because the law, the constitution, by the virtue of the pronouncement and ruling of the Supreme Court, bans them from that. So we see, we live in a society where people, you know, live up, went to this, and then when it is against their wishes and, you know, aspirations, they shout. But when other people also, you know, by virtue of their actions or inactions, disregard, you know, constitutional, provisions, these other people will also shout. But how can you live in a glass house and begin to throw stones? You are condemning illegality. You are condemning people who don't obey court orders. Yet in your own actions, you are not obeying court orders.
Okay.
So where are we moving from there?
All right.
I think we need to appeal to our conscience and begin to adhere strictly to the provisions of the Constitution of the land.
All right. Amy, what is your take on this issue? And I would love you to also narrow it down to the current reality in Rivers State.
The essence of law in a society, it is not just for the sake of the law, but to define actions that are acceptable and also to state actions that are prohibited. All of these are meant to ensure that there is harmony that can drive development in the state. But when the people decides, you know, to disdainfully disregard that law, they just know that there will be problem. Development will be hindered, peace will be hindered, and what you will be seeing is social vices, because every man will become right in their own eyes, because the law is meant to regulate this. You see, right from the day the 1999 Constitution was adopted on May 5th, 1999, I become operational May 29, 1999 to date. The law has never given room for caretaker practice in the Nigeria state with regard to the third tier of government. When people say our problem is the Constitution, because that has become one of the sophistry that we hear around. Every time, here and there, oh, Nigeria constitution is faulty, Nigeria constitution is bad, Nigeria constitution is anti-development. Sometimes I ask them, if a law, for an instance, says AFRE, which is public fighting, is a crime, and some people still go ahead and be engaging in this fighting in public places, is it the law that is the problem, or the implementers and the citizens who have refused to respect the law that is a problem? You see, Section 1 of the 1999 Constitution as amended, subsection 1, state the supremacy of the law over all authorities, individuals, whether you are a federal government, you are a state government or local government, whether you are a politician or not politician, whatever category you find yourself, the law is supreme above you. And subsection 2 of that section 1 then clearly stated that no persons or group of persons shall take over the government of Nigeria except it must be in accordance with the written law. But what do we have in time past? Like Prof actually said, we see people who have abandoned the law, people who decided to jettison the law and become very recalcitrant to the extent that you mentioning the law is like you are attacking their personality, and they will even come after you, you know, to discredit you, insult you. More painfully, you will have some other Nigerians applauding such action and even demonizing you, calling your sorts of names, that you are demarketing their leader. And the same Nigeria will turn around and organize protests when it is not in their favor anymore. The same Nigeria will turn around and begin to vilify, you know, castigate the system. Oh, the Nigeria system is bad. The question is, have you been encouraging the system? Have you been, what seed are you be sowing into the system? The law clearly says in section 7 of the 1999 Constitution that what is permitted to run the affairs of the third tier of government, which is the local government, is democratically elected persons. But we have some persons who were elected by the virtues of this, the same ground norm, who developed and became emperors at the state level and decided to disdainfully disregard the law that made them governors, and decided to appoint or be appointed people to run the affairs of the local government. There was a forum where I asked, you that is supporting that, yes, you did it out of necessity. Oh, you can't leave government in vacuum. Oh, you can't do this as based on the political situation in Rivers State. Therefore, we are appointing caretaker. I said, that is good. You that is appraising this, would you accept a caretaker governor? Should we not say, President Tinubu, please, oh, based on the current political situation in Rivers State, please give us a caretaker governor? Will you accept? He said, why will you say a thing like that? Why will you say it? Does he have the power to do so? No president have the power. I'm an enemy of state. They started calling me names. I say, yes, if I'm enemy of state, then who are you? Who are you? And this is what we are saying. The apex court in the land have so decided in a judgment that is binding. In fact, when you look at the list of the defendants, Rivers State is listed in number 32, meaning Rivers State is inclusive, where the apex court so ruled that anything that has to do with caretaker is illegal. Anything that has to do with ad hoc government at the third tier of the government is illegal. You still have some people parading themselves. You still have a governor voting funds for these people to function in a democratic state, not just a constitutional democratic state. And the people are celebrating, giving thanksgiving in churches, or going to places and congratulating them even in public spaces without shame. And we still want Nigeria to work. How? I have my interests. I have things that I want to drive in the society. But if I juxtapose them with the laws of the land, I will be so restrained. If I believe that this thing is illegal, I might be punished for it. But you are now saying, no, you should not be restrained. You want to do your own the way you like. What about in the situation today, if the outgone local government chairman decided to say, no, today we have resumed, and goes to the radio station, TV, and be running congratulatory messages, and going to places and be performing some government functions and all that, will this caretaker accept it? They will come and say, no, some people are usurping the powers of government. Whereas some people are actually criminal parading themselves in the name of caretakers. Who then do I blame?
That's the question.
I will blame the institution of the states. When I mean the institution of that, I will blame the police, and I will blame the president of the Federal Republic of Nigeria.
All right.
Why will I do so? You swore to an oath to protect the Constitution of the Federal Republic of Nigeria. The police, you were there existing to enforce the law. Do you know that law becomes very effective if the law is enforced? But it becomes so lenient, you will beat more problem that will overwhelm you even as a police. The president of the Federal Republic of Nigeria and the police ought to be arresting those criminals, those usurping the powers of government, are parading themselves as caretaker, because the law prohibits such action, in fact forbids such action, and call them illegal. So you are meant to enforce this law to ensure that whenever you find them, you arrest them for usurping the power of government. It's a criminal offense. But what do we see? Sometimes we even see the police providing security to illegality. So what is the difference between them and armed robbers who go about robbing people of their belongings? So it is expected that you should provide security to these robbers as well. How do we continue to drive in this trajectory and expect that we have a state where we experience harmony and tranquility? It is impossible. The law has stated. Supreme Court has affirmed it. Supreme Court didn't do anything on that. There was no judicial activism there. What they did was simply to read out what the law says and what is expected. I listened to some of these arguments in the state, in Rivers State, where some people say government cannot be left in vacuum because we must have people running the affairs of government. Since local government election wasn't conducted, and I ask, who created the vacuum? Who? Is it the law that created the vacuum? Is it the federal government that created the vacuum? Is it the court that created the vacuum? Or the executive government of Rivers State that created the vacuum? So why would the executive government be telling me that there is no vacuum, so we can't leave the total government instead of vacuum? You knew that your tenure expires on the 28th of May, 12 a.m. Your tenure have expired. The president is aware of this, so the president will always encourage the electoral body to conduct election before the expiration of his own tenure and the tenure of the government at the subnational level. You, the governor who is in charge of the state affairs, you knew that the tenure of these people will expire June 17, 2024. But you were elected, inaugurated May 29, 2023, meaning you have 1 year and be living with this information. You refuse to empower the electoral body at the state level to conduct an election that will replace the outgoing chairman. There you now came, oh, you can't allow the vacuum. A vacuum that was created by you, a vacuum that you orchestrated for your own selfish political drive, that you want to impose something illegal structure that you will now call your political structure at the state level, undermining the ground norm that even established you as a governor. And you're not saying, no, there can't be a vacuum. The vacuum is your own fault. It's your own problem. So the Attorney General of the Federation has done his own part. The police ought to go about arresting these people who are parading themselves. If the governor then say, oh, give us some time, you don't have time because you have all the time to encourage and empower the electoral body at the state to conduct, but you refused. So you should be punished for it. do not have this structure, this illegal structure in place. You must be made to face the music the way it ought to be, following the law of the land. And you that submit yourself to be used to that extent, you need to pay, because you are now helping to destroy the Nigerian state by disobeying our law.
All right, Amy, I wanted to ask you a question when you were speaking. You made mention of funds being given to the caretaker committee, and you were looking at the direction of the Supreme Court, instructing that allocation should not go to unelected officers or chairmen at the local government level. Now, the question would be, in River State, against the Supreme Court judgment, these caretaker committee chairmen are still parading themselves as council bosses, as it were. How are they going to get funded? Because if they cannot receive allocation from the federal government, how do they run their councils? How are they getting funded? Is the governor funding these people from River State's money, as against what the Supreme Court has ruled that their funding will come directly from the federal?
You see, what is on the hand does not need mirror to look at it. Who is funding these illegal people who are usurping the power of government? It's obvious that the governor is funding them.
Isn't that misappropriation of funds, one, and isn't that constitutional infraction by the governor?
Currently, River State, if you talk about constitutional infraction, you will not ask which of them is not actually constitutional infraction. River State is in a state of illegality. Everything has to, if you judge majority of the political situation in the state, and you judge some of the actions taken by government at the state level, you see that there is so much illegality. Everything is shrouded in illegality, from one to another, from the other to another. This is what is happening.
All right.
If we continue to do this, I can assure the society that development will be artificial. And once you continue to drive artificial development, the reality will come one day, just as we are facing now, where peace will elude us. A situation like Prof actually said, Thomas Hope envisaged this, and he recognized, I recommended that people should submit to the rule of law. Because if we don't do this, it therefore means that we have a state of nature. And in the state of nature, nobody respects the rights of the other. Everybody will want to do their own bidding, the way they feel and how they want it. The government might not be safe, because to that extent the government may give order. It will be asked, why are you directing me? What power do you have to direct me? Even when you are not obeying the law.
Okay.
So we must go back to constitutionalism. We must submit to the rule of law. The governor funding illegality is misappropriation and a criminal offense. Because whatever fund that as a state government that you must expend must be budgeted for and approved by the legislative arm of government according to the division of functions as recommended as stipulated by our law. So if you still go ahead and be investing state resources in illegality, some of these is an impeachable offense. That is why when some people say some people should be impeached, they say, what has it done? What has it done? What has it done? And they forgot. If you go to section 188 of the 1999 Constitution, you will see what gross misconduct is. Gross misconduct can be adjudged by the legislature to say, you didn't greet me the good morning well. The manner you say good afternoon, I don't like it. So that amount to gross misconduct. Because now, the law allowed them to so define gross misconduct.
The fact that the governor has refused to obey the Supreme Court judgment and is also funding this council committee, caretaker committee, according to you, is tantamount to gross misconduct and it's an impeachable offense.
Yes,
right.
The law stipulates what gross misconduct is and what are impeachable offense. It's there, not me that is actually saying this now. It's what the law says.
Okay.
It's written in our law, and that is the ground law we operate today.
All right.
So it is, in fact, for me, it is abhorring. It's an unfortunate situation to see a man who, by virtue of a law, came to power because there are other more qualified Rivers people. There are other more educated Rivers people. There are other more politically will Rivers people. But by virtue of a constitution, a particular person became privileged. I was selected among the millions of other Rivers people. And by that, the state resources were entrusted in your custody. You now given issue commands, issue orders, and every other Rivers people, including your elders, they are now obeying you as submitting to those things you are bringing up because the law has said you are the governor. Then if you now go about funding what abuses and insult the constitution, the people one day will tell you, Mr. Governor, you can't tell me to do this anymore.
All right. All right. Prof, what is your take? Now, Emmy has spoken about judicial rascality and constitutional infractions by the governor, particularly with respect to flagrant disobedience to the Supreme Court ruling on local government autonomy. What is your take on that?
Well, I think I've said that earlier, but just to maybe reiterate that fact. The Supreme Court is the highest court of the land. And like I said, in a democratic setting, you have theory of separation of power and, of course, checks and balance. So what that means is that judiciary primarily is charged with the responsibility of interpreting the laws of the land, and that interpretation is expected to be upheld and executed by other tiers of government, every personality within the context or purview of Nigerian society. So what that means that it's just a simple affirmation of that constitutional provision. Let me also quickly clear one impression, which of course arises or arose from this illegality in terms of caretaker committee. I listened to some people, maybe because of sheer selfishness or ignorance, I don't know, where they were saying that trying to justify caretaker committee, that well, it doesn't apply to the caretaker committee, that ruling doesn't apply to caretaker committee chairman in Rivers State. And I began to ask why. When I read that judgment, the judgment relied wholly on the provisions of 1999 Constitution. 1999 it's not 2024, which means that law has been there before 2024. So if a judgment relied on that constitutional provision, so why are you saying it doesn't apply to Rivers State? It doesn't apply to Rivers State, the local government chairman. Yeah, just for those people. I think something is definitely wrong with some of us. Maybe because of sheer selfish interest, ignorance, or wickedness, or they just don't want to do the right thing because of what they may benefit from it. It's like fishing in a troubled sea. You want to do advantage of a troubled situation for your own personal interest. That's what is happening. So I think that is important for us to do. And again, the judgment also upheld the tenure elongation, of democratically elected public officers. And here there's the argument has been that the Rivers State House of Representatives has no right to extend the tenure. But you can see from the judgment
that they actually had the right to
yes, they had. In fact, I was startled when I was reading that judgment this morning, preparing to my coming here today. I was startled that, look, that kind of provision is there. And I don't know whether, in Rivers State, we don't have people who are, all those people, they don't know the laws of the land. We have the Attorney General of Rivers State. Is he saying that he's not aware of that constitutional provision? Or are they just simply blindfolded by, sheer political rascality?
Is that a case of executive interference in the job of the legislature, the House of Assembly, as it were? Because you recall that a law was already passed, 3 months to the expiration of the tenure of this outgone chairman. There were calls, even prior to that time. Emmy has been on my show, and we also discussed that, calls to hold elections for council chairman, to take over. However, the governor was silent on it. And then, prior to that time, the Rivers State House of Assembly, led by Martin Samehuli, made that law, local government law number 5, extending the tenure of local government. And then another argument now came up after that, and people were saying it is not applicable to the present council chairman, that is to be applied or implemented from the next election cycle. a lot of arguments. But then, what is your take?
Yeah, you see,